how to get over someone and really take your power back. This is one of these questions that so many of us ask ourselves, or at least at some point in our lives, we've asked ourselves, like, man, what is it that I need to do? And I came to a very beautiful roadmap and a strategy and like a concept almost, how we can move from emotional reactivity into full liberation. And I realized in a 10-day silent meditation retreat where I learned the technique of the Buddha, Vipassana meditation. And it's you go 10 days into a retreat center, you completely seclude yourself. You eliminate all the distractions that you can possibly have. So you don't look anyone in the eyes, you don't touch anyone, you don't speak, you don't write, you don't journal, you don't exercise, you don't do nothing else but sitting for 10 to 12 hours every single day and meditate for 10 full days in a row. So it's super, super profound. And I highly recommend it to absolutely everything, because for me, in many ways, that was my path to liberation. And I also realized, because at the time I was going through my own challenges in my relationship, to say at least. And the first 3 days, so I want to explain to you the 5 layers now. And I'm going to explain to you the 5 layers now of this concept, which I call the 5 A's of liberation. And the first layer that we really need to acknowledge, that we need to accept, that we need to get in touch with is anger. That's the first A, okay? Because over the first 3 days, sitting in silence and meditating, all I was able to experience was so much anger, so much resentment, so much negativity in ways I have never experienced before. I'm such an harmonious, happy, good dude, And that type of negativity, to even have allowed myself to feel that, was a stretch already. And it was actually very confronting to, feel these type of emotions that in some ways I've kind of like pushed away. And all of that anger, all of that negativity, all of that resentment was all directed towards her. All of it. And I realized after 3 days of experiencing this, like, wow, this cannot continue to be like this. It was so uncomfortable, right? So another layer deeper, under anger, I found the awareness of all the pain and all the suffering and all the disappointment, that the grief, the sadness that I was in that situation. I'm all about like having harmonious, loving, beautiful partnerships. And here I am, find myself in a partnership where there was so much anger. So after the anger, below the anger, there was this awareness of the pain and the suffering and the sadness that I was experiencing.
Which brings me to today's sponsor. If you're stuck, lost, or confused when it comes to your relationship with men, and you don't know how to communicate your needs to him in a way that makes you feel seen, loved, and heard, then you must see this. Since every woman's personality and circumstance is so unique and so special to you, we have a free relationship assessment quiz that you can take in the link below. That quiz will give you a customizable action plan to give you the love that you deserve, because you're worthy of it and you do deserve it so, so much. So take our free relationship assessment quiz right now, and now back to the video.
And then another layer deeper, I found a layer of a lot of blame and shame. And that all of a sudden was directed towards me, because I realized I am responsible for all of this, like the anger, the sadness, the disappointment, the negativity. None of it had to do with her. It all had to do with me. And this is the third layer, the accountability. Because now all of a sudden I realized, well, this is all my fault. I could have said no at any given moment. I could have made sure that my rights, the principles that I want to apply in my romantic partnership, that these are going to be respected. And they weren't. And the reason for that wasn't her. The reason for that was me, because I didn't enforce those boundaries. I didn't make sure that what I want to apply in my relationship, what I want and desire in my partnership, the way I want to be treated, the way I want to spend time, like all of these things, it had nothing to do with her. It had all to do with me. Now, this was obviously, again, very confronting in some ways. But you know what? Actually, it felt way more like I'm stepping towards that liberation. I felt empowered because I realized, well, if this is all on me, And it clearly was, because, like I said, I could have said no at any given moment. I could have stepped out of this. I could have made so many different choices and decisions, and I haven't. But that meant now I'm actually in a very empowered position. I'm in a powerful position, because if I am responsible for all the pain and all the sadness and the anger and everything else that I have experienced, that means I can also change it. That means I can make different choices and make different decisions moving forward. And I don't have to continue the same thing and experience the same things over and over again that clearly weren't really aligned with what I love and desire. So that was super, super empowered. So we went from anger, the first layer, to the awareness of the sadness, the second layer, to then go into the accountability, because the blame and shame, it was actually directed towards me. And this was super, super important, because then I could go into the next layer, which is forgiveness and which is compassion. And that's one towards myself, because I realized, oh, wow, those are my faults. And yeah, we're all making mistakes. We're all making faults. We're all sometimes don't make the best decisions because we just didn't know better at a time. And that's what happened to me. So I could have some forgiveness and compassion towards myself. And actually also, I was able to start forgiving her, because all that anger that I directed towards her, it was actually almost unfair. Yes, she didn't treat me right. And yes, there were many things that were not okay. And yet, at the same time, if I would have just stood up for myself and enforced my boundaries and make sure I am going to respect it, I'm going to be respected in the way how I want to be respected, in the way how I want that respect and that loyalty and everything else that entails within my relationship, then this is on me and not on her. So it wasn't fair to put all this anger and this resentment on her. And I realized, okay, I need to forgive myself for that too, and I need to forgive her for that too, because I created in some ways a picture that wasn't really quite correct. So that's the fourth layer, the acceptance, the absolution. And the fifth layer is a really, really important one too, because now you can go, once you went through all the other ones, you can go into the fifth A, which is appreciation. The love and the liberation happens when you go through all of these 5 layers. When you realize, okay, now I've almost eliminated the intensity in those sensations and the emotions and feelings that I've experienced, because I literally started to understand every single one of them. The Buddha always says, is if you see something from the very beginning to the very end, it becomes empty. Meaning, it's the charge that has been there at some point, it's gone. I see everything that happened. I see and understood every single element of it. And when you do that, and you take the responsibility and you take the accountability and you apply the forgiveness and the compassion and you apply okay, you create the awareness and you go through the anger in order to actually transmute that anger, then you can literally go back into a state of love. And that's the liberation, because now all of a sudden I have that appreciation for everything that happened, because it gave me so many lessons. It gave me such a bigger understanding of life and relationships, and where I haven't showed up at my best, and where I allowed someone else to, do things that are not really aligned with me and what I want, and how I can make decisions and choices and creating boundaries and lines moving forward. And that's a blessing, otherwise I would have never had that. I didn't learn it from anyone else. I needed to go through this myself in that regard. And that's the piece, and that's so liberating. And that's so, so important. And that's so beautiful. So if you find yourself being very, very angry, just understand that's the first layer. Yes, you want to feel it, and you want to feel it all. You want to feel it too, that you're getting so angry and upset about the fact that you feel so angry, because obviously, who wants to consistently feel angry? We can either numb ourselves, which is not right. We're not accepting a layer of truth, because you feel that anger. It's there, it's real, so allow it to be there. And then go through all of these other layers and figure out your path. That's the one that worked for me. These 5 A's of liberation are really powerful. They give such an important piece of context to our emotions, to the lack of responsibility, and then moving through these layers, finding the accountability, and then going through the forgiveness and compassion process, and then ultimately ending up in love and liberation, because there's so much appreciation for all the lessons that you've learned, because you went through all the loops and all the cycles and all the layers, and the thing that you see now from the very beginning to the very end becomes empty.